Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB pro bodybuilder and doctor of chiropractic. Today's guest is Dorian Haywood. Dorian, I want to welcome you to the podcast.
Quentin, thanks for having me.
For sure. So Dorian, we're just going to start off with a couple of questions I like to ask all of my guests. The first question that I have for you is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
I'm glad you asked a few because I don't think I could separate a single one. I remember when I was really young, like 4 years old, watching the Conan movies, and something about those Conan movies left an impression in my head. I thought it was just so awesome the way that Arnold was built and the way that he conducted himself in those movies and everything. So Arnold was my first and foremost impression of bodybuilding, and it stuck. But when I was like 15 years old, I actually started following professional bodybuilding. And back then, the big dogs on the scene, Dorian and I was just going out. Then the new era was coming in with Flex Wheeler and Ronnie Coleman. So all those guys, Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman, Flex Wheeler. And currently, if I was to look at a bodybuilder who I currently look up to who's competing, I'd say Kuklo. I always get along with him very well in person. And I think he's got a potential to do great here in the Arnold coming up this weekend. I hope there's nobody I'm leaving out. I can say this, I've met almost every single Mr. Olympia. And back during Jay Cutler's era when he was, Mr. Olympia, I remember watching how he conducted himself and the way he do interviews. And he was so boring and monotone to me. But actually, in person, I think I resonate with Jay and we get along better than any other Mr. Olympia I've met. So I got to also give Jay a shout out because he's a great guy in person.
Now, two things. First of all, I'm right with you with Steve Kuklo. I actually picked him to win the Arnold this coming weekend. So we're right on track there. And the second thing I want to touch on, I know that there's video out on YouTube in regards to you posing for Jay Cutler at Venice. What was that experience like for you, Dorian?
Oh, that was cool. I first developed a relationship with Jay because I'm from Colorado, and just north of us in Cheyenne, they hold a show. And they've been holding the Jay Cutler Classic or the Steve Kuklo Classic up there for years. And I'd go and guest pose that show. And after one of the shows, I got to sit down with Jay and we had dinner, and that kind of established a relationship with us. So I kind of knew who he was. So every time I go to Venice, for some reason, Jay's there. When I go and because my coach is from LA and we do training camps in Venice. And for some reason, when I go there, Jay's there, or at least his cameraman, Dave Mad Max, is there. And we all get along great. So, Jay says, let's get some footage for whatever his YouTube channel is, Jaywalking. And, it was just cool. So cool having somebody who's not only a friend and a mentor, but somebody who's also several time Mr. Olympia, kind of in my corner for this.
Absolutely.
No, so yeah, it was one of those things that's iconic because in that same spot, I see generations of awesome bodybuilders, Flex Wheeler, all these guys that are training out of the Mecca, posing in that same spot. So I went over that same spot, and Jay just jumped right in there and started critiquing, and he was very happy with what he saw.
Yeah, that's got to be kind of a surreal moment to have four-time Mr. Olympia Jay Cutler, taking a look at your physique and stuff, and it's got to be an honor as well. Now I want to ask you kind of the second question that I like to ask all my guests so that we can kind of transition into a little bit of your backstory before we kind of get fully into all things bodybuilding. At what age, Dorian, did you start lifting weights, and what was the reason why you started lifting weights at that age?
I think I was interested in lifting weights from even younger than when I actually started. But I think when I really started to pursue it, I was the late end of 15 years old. And there's a very specific reason why. When I first started high school, I was underweight, wrestling the 103-pound class. I was like 87, 88 pounds, wrestling up to 103. And that first year I took some real good at butt kickings, and I think that kind of humbled me. And it also, I think, taught me how to take a loss well. But I'm an athlete and I'm competitive and I don't want to go out like that. So sophomore year, I was still underweight, That's when I started reading like Flex magazines and Muscle and Strength. And I started using their diet strategies and the training strategies to help me gain weight. And it worked wonderfully because I started putting on muscle fairly quick. My performance shot through the roof. And the very next year, I was a state finalist to the 103-pound class as a junior in high school. So that's what got me started. And I got to say, I started about 15 years. So right now I'm about 24 years of lifting under my belt.
Excellent, man. I think that's pretty cool, especially when people start at such a young age. Now, I want to kind of move to your backstory a little bit. So if you don't mind, just touching on a little bit of your childhood, your upbringing, Dorian. Where did you grow up? Do you have any siblings? I'm assuming sports shaped a big part of your childhood, but just touch on that childhood, maybe a highlight or two up to high school, and then we'll transition from there.
Well, my family moved around a lot. I was born in Midland, Texas. Then we moved to Harlingen, Texas. Then we moved to Paducah, Kentucky, where my little brother was born, Cody. And I'm 3.5 years older than my younger brother, and that's my only sibling. But we moved a handful of times more than that. Paducah, Kentucky to McMinnville, Tennessee, to Danville, Kentucky, to Palatka, Florida. Then we kind of settled down in Madison, Indiana. I went 6th grade through all my high school in Madison, Indiana. Then, that's pretty much my childhood. I finished high school in Madison, Indiana. Then I went to Ball State to pursue a degree in exercise science.
So, in terms of kind of like moving around that much, was that something that you enjoyed, or was that something that kind of, sucked for you at the age? Because it seems like, when you move a lot, you're starting to get your friends, and then, those friends are gone. You got to make new friends. What was that experience like for you personally, Dorian?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It sucked in that regard. And at the time, it seemed like it was something that was not a good thing. But retrospectively, looking back on it, the way that I've had to make relationships, break relationships, reformulate relationships, that just really, I think, evolved my personality and evolved my way of being able to communicate and cope with people coming and going from my life. And I think that's a lot of people don't have that because people don't move around as much as I did.
Right.
So like I said, it sucked losing friends when I was young, but at the same time, I think that kind of developed my personality to what it is. So for sure, in the long run, I'm kind of happy with it.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned wrestling. What other sports did you play when you were growing up then?
Oh, all of them. All of them. I did cross country when I was in junior high, wrestled. I was on a dive team, a diver. It's funny because I'm not a good swimmer. I sink like a freaking stone. Then in high school, I did track and field. I did pole vault and some mid-distance stuff. Played soccer for a while. I really wasn't great at soccer. I just used it as a conditioning thing for wrestling. And I wasn't that big, but I was still, I had that wrestler mentality. I could hit people, and I was physical with these little skinny soccer guys. That's what made me a good soccer player. It wasn't my ball skills or anything like that. It was just I like to go just be physical and push people around and not really be a soccer player. Be a wrestler on the soccer field is basically what I was. But wrestling's where I really prevailed. That seemed to become the most natural to me. There was years I really didn't like doing it, but I was so good at it, I couldn't really quit. I ended up getting a scholarship to go to Cumberland College and wrestle for them. That didn't last very long. I was in Williamsburg, Kentucky, and all I was doing there was wrestling, And I figured if I'm going to college, I need to educate myself, and that wasn't happening there. And I kind of got sick, and I injured myself, and I see what's going on, and I'm like, you know what? I was pursuing a business degree, and I just wasn't into it. So that's when I went to Muncie, Indiana, went to Ball State University and got my degree in exercise science.
All right, awesome. So, I wanna ask you about that, because it's for a lot of us when we're younger, it's hard for us to kind of know what we want to be when we quote unquote grow up. So you mentioned you were going to school to for business, and then you transfer schools, and then sounds like you changed your major. Was there something a lot of us when we're younger, we want to be a professional athlete or something to that degree, but where was your mindset kind of in high school? Did you kind of have an idea of what you wanted to be when you graduated high school, when you grew up, or did that not come until later when you were in college?
It's a good question. I really don't think I found my path until later in college. My mother was a nurse, and she's always had like a lot of respect for doctors, and I always kind of saw myself doing something like that. I wasn't totally confident in my academic capacity because I never really pushed myself like that. B, I didn't like the thought of, being in an environment where I'm working with sick people that are dying and, they're in agony and pain. It just seems depressing to me. And I really respect the doctors that do that and help those people. But I ended up going to Ball State University, and I didn't really know what I was going to do with an exercise science degree, because it's really bodybuilding that led me to everything that I've really done successful in my life. Bodybuilding got my interest in exercise. That was what led to my degree in exercise science. I was at Ball State for 5 years, and in that time I had a roommate, and he said he was going to be a chiropractor. And when I was a senior in high school, I suffered a low back injury, and I saw a chiropractor for the first time. And it was a muscle soft tissue injury. So there's really not much he could do to help me, but I really respected the profession and kind of the thought, that type of doctor focuses on optimizing the human condition. It's not dealing with a patient who's already in a state of crisis. It's the opposite end, taking a patient and elevating them to an optimal level of health. And something about that was really cool to me. And knowing my roommate and his academic capacity, I was like, if this guy can do it, I can do it. So I think that's what really motivated me to pursue chiropractic. But, chiropractic, once again, we're working with the body, and bodybuilding just led me to everything I've ever done successfully, both physically and academically.
So when did you mentioned 15 years old when you kind of started strength training. When did the actual bodybuilding come on the scene? How old were you? And how did you kind of actually get introduced to bodybuilding? I'm sure probably was through the magazines that you were reading when you were younger. But what did that look like in terms of actually diving into quote unquote bodybuilding and not just resistance or strength training?
So there's a few things there that kind of motivated me to go towards bodybuilding. As soon as I started training, my physique just started to get round and bubbly, like looked like a bodybuilder. I had all those shapes. And even when I was a little kid, I could hit that front double bicep and my bicep just popped. So we got that going for me. Now I lived out in the country in Indiana, and I didn't have very many neighbors, but luckily Dave Lippard was my neighbor. He lived directly across the street, and he was he was a bodybuilder. He wasn't a pro, but nevertheless, he had his whole garage set up with this big elaborate gym setup. And I was telling a friend this the other night, I used to just go over there and I'd be real quiet. I wouldn't even knock on the door to let them know I'm training. I'd just sneak in the garage and I'd train and be quiet, and I'd leave. They'd never even know I was there. But, that was a big factor that kind of like pushed me to kind of pursue bodybuilding. And there's a couple of homeboys from my hometown in the gym that we trained in, because Madison, Indiana is not a real big town. But the Wingham brothers kind of took me under their wing and, kind of pushed me to be a bodybuilder. And I remember going way out in the country in Manville, Indiana, middle of nowhere. And I got lost out there in the boonies trying to find my way in the river valley to find their house. I pull up, I see this guy. He's pushing 80 years old. And he's out in the front of this, in front of these two houses in a gravel pit with he had over 500 pounds on the deadlift bar. It's like, as soon as I pulled up, it's like he's waiting for me. His old ass grabs this 500 pounds, lifts it, and slams it down in the gravel. And that was my first introduction with Tom Wingham. Then I went in and we lifted a little bit and they showed me some poses and how to pose. Then the next weekend I went off and did the Bluegrass Muscle Classic at 18 years old. That was Tricky Jackson's show in Lexington, Kentucky. And I was 136 pounds. And I think I got last place. I think I got last place in the teen class. And I got 5th out of 6 in the lightweight class. So it wasn't really, and it was funny because I didn't know anything about bodybuilding besides having a good physique, being athletic and posing. I showed up, I didn't have any tan on. You could tell I didn't know what I was doing, but you know, that's learning experience. You live, you learn.
For sure.
So that was 2000, first contest.
That was 2000 was your first competition at 18, huh?
136 pounds of muscle.
Now, this is an interesting question that you know, I often think. Do you feel like you chose bodybuilding, Dorian, or do you feel like bodybuilding chose you?
Man, I never thought of it like that. I can tell you this. I think I chose bodybuilding and I pursued it, but I didn't know that I was as gifted as I was at the time, because I was a small guy. I don't think I'm lucky. Like, I'm trying to think. Jay Cutler is a good example. You know, by the time he was 18, he was huge. When I was 18, I put on weight, and I was at 136 pounds competing. You know, and he was well over 200 pounds. He had a structure like a man, and he had the muscle maturity. You know, and I felt like I was never going to be able to achieve that. You know, when I first started bodybuilding, 16, 17 years old, looking at these guys that are professional bodybuilders and that are Olympians, it's like I almost created a mental barrier for myself because I didn't think I could achieve that. And I think that mental barrier at some point set me back when I was actually good enough to go ahead and start rising up into the national ranks. So it wasn't until, you know, my early to mid 30s that I had enough size to be a pro. And that's when, you know, it clicked to me. It's like, you know what? There's no reason you can't do this now. You've put on the size, you put in the work, you've got muscle maturity that's better than most bodybuilders out there because you put so much time into it. So in that way, I think bodybuilding chose me. You know, I think I took time to develop as a good bodybuilder, and I had a belief in myself because I kind of saw the qualities of my physique that were good to bodybuilding. But you know, I'm 39 years old now, and I feel it's the other way around. I feel bodybuilding chose me. You know, I think I've got the genetic capacity and the work ethic and the knowledge to be good at this.
Absolutely. Okay, before we completely talk bodybuilding the rest of our conversation here, I do want to go back to you going to chiropractic school, getting your doctor of chiropractic license, because from my personal perspective, I think it's pretty honorable. I think it's pretty cool that not only are you a top level professional bodybuilder, but you also have a very what we would consider professional career in terms of, you know, education. So you get your doctor of chiropractic degree and licensure. What was that experience like, you know, starting up a practice and moving in that direction career-wise, opposite of being a professional bodybuilder?
Well, I would say somewhat disappointing, to be honest with you. You know, I got out of chiro school, and back in like 80s and 90s, chiros were doing well and they were getting paid well, and insurance companies were paying out great. But basically, when I started practicing chiropractic, you know, things changed, and it wasn't the same nature of the beast that it was a decade or two before. And I came out and I started working as an associate doctor. That's actually what got me out here in the Denver area. I got a job out here as an associate chiropractor. And I worked that job there for 8 months. Then now let me be straight up with you. I ended up getting fired for sexual harassment without sexually harassing anybody. So this happened, there was kind of a power struggle between the office manager and the doctor coming up. And one day I told her, I saw she had a new sweater, and I said, "Hey, I like your new sweater." And her dad's part of the sexual harassment board for Colorado. Next thing you know, I don't have a job, and I've got a wife and a kid I got to support over some false claims. I didn't do anything offensive, but nevertheless, here I am in Colorado, no family, no nothing. And it really brought upon hard times. And I couldn't find a job immediately after that. So that's when I opened up my own practice, Chiro Omega. And it was a slow start. I ended up getting another job, A, personal training, and B, with Mile High Spine and Pain, which is a multidisciplinary practice. And it's kind of depressing. I was rolling down the street the other day, and I rolled past Walmart, or not Walmart, McDonald's. And they said they're hiring for $16 an hour, right? So I did the math on what I was doing. I was working 60 hours a week for Mile High Spine and Pain. They're paying me $1,000 a week. It comes out like $16.66 with a doctorate education. Now McDonald's is paying about the same. So that was kind of a kick in the pants to see. But that kind of shows you kind of why it's kind of unfulfilling how I started my professional career as a doctor. But at the same time I was working with Mile High Spine and Pain, Chiro Omega was ramping up. And then once Chiro Omega ramped up enough, I no longer worked with Mile High Spine and Pain. I started working like a quarter of the hours and getting paid about 4 times as much working for myself full time. So from then on, it's been pretty cool. But, the idea of working a straight chiropractic job, working with patients, doing adjustments, it was very adaptive what I did with Chiro Omega, because I'm lucky enough to work out of a very awesome professional facility over at Armbrust Pro Gym. So I've got my office at Armbrust Pro Gym, but not only was I seeing patients at the time, but I was also like training people. And I have a whole team of people that I train, doing online training. I had a good friend of mine saying, you can't put all your money in one avenue. You have to have several revenue streams to be successful. And I took that to heart. So, I did that for the longest time. And within the past couple of years, I've really downgraded how many patients I see. I really don't see patients that much, if at all anymore, because I'm so busy working with my team, doing online training, and I've developed a new business called Dr. Fit, which is an online resource for fitness and nutrition. So that's taken off.
So that was actually something I had written down. I saw on your Instagram. I wanted to bring up with you, and perfect segue, perfect transition. Why don't you talk about Dr. Fit, please, Dorian, and just share with all the listeners, the viewers, kind of what that is and what you provide and what you offer through it.
Okay. Well, when I first started doing like online training, I initially started, and people were asking me a whole lot about like training technique. And when it comes to making some type of programming for people to train, it's so easy for me to tell you exactly how many exercises you need to do, how many reps you need to do per exercise. But when I'm programming like this, that leaves out the 2 biggest factors, intensity and technique. So I find I'm kind of limited in how well I can train people, like doing online stuff. So I wanted to create like a more advanced platform for me to be able to help more people and give them better quality of training. So we've been working on developing a big video database for us to be able to show technique and show intensity at the proper levels. And that's the other thing. I think the way that I've been doing online training, I can only work with so many people effectively. I think there's a line that if I start working with too many people, that my quality starts to fade. And I don't want that. So the system's set up so we can A, take on a huge amount of clients, and B, we can have extra coaches outside of myself. We've got registered dietitians on staff, and we have other doctors in the program as well, and trainers that will be doing programming. And there's actually a gigantic team, in the background working on all the infrastructure associated with the digital stuff, everything computer-based, the website, the app technology that we're coming out with. So I'm super proud of what we're developing, and it's going to be going live here in the next week.
Awesome, man. So is your personal Instagram, Dorian, then? Is that where the listeners, the viewers can kind of pay attention to your own Instagram for all of the launching for Dr. Fit then?
Yeah, we have that going on, and we have Dr. Fit Health and Wellness on Instagram as well. Dr. Fit Health and Wellness. And that one's new, and we're starting to develop some content there, but that's also kind of giving people an idea or direction of where they can do, where they can find resources on my website and app.
Okay, perfect. And then you also, I see on your social media often there's a group of people. It looks like kind of like a team that you guys meet and do training, and I'm assuming posing and stuff like that. If somebody's out there in the Denver area where Armbrust Pro Gym is located, is that something that somebody that's listening to this, they can kind of reach out to you and get kind of plugged in with that team? Or how does that work for like in-person training, in-person experiences with you and your group?
Yeah, I think Instagram's been a fantastic resource for people to be able to contact me on Dr. Fit Dorian Haywood on Instagram. They can reach out to me. I get a lot of people that hit me up there. Not very many people coming up to me in person. People seem intimidated, you know, for whatever reason. I'm a nice guy. I look big and I look mean, but especially when I'm dieting, I got all those holes in my face and I look like I want to kill people. Sometimes I do, but I'm off season now, so I'm fat and happy. But yeah, I get a lot of people that reach out to me through Instagram. I think that's the main way people can get a hold of me.
Okay.
Now we got the Dr. Fit thing. They can get a hold of me through there as well.
All right. Awesome. Now I want to kind of spend the rest of our time on bodybuilding here. So would you touch on your competition, kind of your history in terms of up to when you earned your pro card, and then we'll kind of get into some of your pro competition experiences. So what was your competition history after that first show when you're 18 in 2000 up to when you received and earned your pro card?
16 years time we're talking about. It took me 16 years to get a pro card for my first competition. I was very lucky because the school I went to, Ball State University, their exercise science program put on a campus-wide bodybuilding competition. So it wasn't an NPC contest, but it was a very competitive contest, and a lot of people were very into bodybuilding up there in Muncie. There's really not too much else to do besides drink. So I ended up doing 3 Mr. Ball State contests. The first one I got second place. I was about 185 pounds in my second show, which was pretty crazy because I graduated high school. I was wrestling 125. That summer, I did my first show at 136. Then within that 1 year's time, I went from 125 to 175. Then a year later, I competed at 185, which would be my second show. So I got second place. The second time I did Mr. Ball State was 2003. I won the overall. I did it again in 2005. I won the overall. And I skipped a year because I wanted somebody else to win. Then the paper interviewed me and they said, why didn't you compete in 2004? I'm like, I wanted somebody else to win. And everybody thought I was so cocky. But good luck. So now we're at 2005. I did one contest in Daytona Beach and I won the light heavyweights, but didn't win the overall in 2006. Then I got into Chiro school and I didn't compete very much. I ended up getting married and having a kid in that time. And I think I did 2 shows. I did the OCB natural show, which I won the middleweight division, but didn't win the overall. I would have been a natural pro if I would have won the overall. Then first show using gear, I did the 2010 Southern States show. And I got to compete against Jonathan Irizarry. And it's kind of crazy because we've been competing on the national scene for years and years and years. And even the year I got my pro card, we were in that first call out together at USA's. But I don't think it was till I finally got out of Chiro school where I finally had the time, the resources financially. About a year after moving, not even within a year moving to Denver, I discovered Armbrust Pro Gym. And I describe this place as, you know, certain reptiles like a boa constrictor. If you put it in a small cage, that boa constrictor won't grow. It'll stay small its whole life. I felt going armbrist, you put me in the big cage. And there was guys, I for decades, I was always the biggest guy in my gym wherever I went. I go in armbrist pro gym. You got Phil Heath. You got other amateur bodybuilders that are chasing that pro card. You know, plenty of guys that were bigger than me and better than me at that time. But, you know, at that time passes and I got better and better and better. I did my first national show in 2011. I went to USA's and got a true 16th place. I had 76 points. All the rest, so everybody else who got 16th got 80. So I got true 16th. I thought that was okay. Then that was 2011. I think I did a few more national shows. Finally won my first national championships in 2014 with junior nationals. I won the overall there. And, you know, I thought I was really close to getting my pro card there at that time, but I had a couple humbling experiences. You know, I kept chasing it that year. I ended up that year, I think I got 7th place at USA's first call out. Then nationals, I think I got like 11th or 12th, like 2nd or 3rd call out. And I'm just like, what the heck is happening? And the following year, I didn't do very good. I think I expected to get top 3 at USA's with 2 other guys, Sean Lindo and Benny Brantley. And we ended up getting like 11th, 12th, and 13th. So I think there was a little favoritism at that show. I think they wanted Cody Montgomery to win that show and nobody else good to stand next to him. That's what happened. Let's see. Then I got demoralized there at North Americans too. I think I got like a 12th place finish or something. That's when I met my coach, Dave Kallick. And I wasn't even looking for a coach at the time, but we just met. We clicked like we were brothers, long lost brothers. And we started working together. I told him like right off the bat, I'm going to start working with you. This guy's he's got the education of somebody who's very academic, but he also has the street smarts as well. You know, he's been around the block and I needed that experience on my side. And I really appreciated his knowledge and I still do. So there we are, 2015. 2016, after working with Dave for several months, we go in, we needed to qualify for nationals again. So we did the first annual Colorado Cup and I won the overall there. Then went into the USA's and got a real close 2nd place to Rashid Oldacre, which was by far the biggest competitor I've ever competed against. Now, mind you, 2015, I'm a heavyweight. 2016 is my first year as a super heavyweight. So 2nd place there, 3rd place North Americans. Then I thought I was going to stop there. Then a couple of weeks into my off season, I'm like, Dave, I look great. I feel great. I think we can push it into nationals. Let's do it. And that's when I got my pro card in 2016.
So 16 years, you said it took you to earn your pro card. At any point in that 16 years, Dorian, did you have thoughts or wrestle with the idea of throwing in the towel with pursuing the pro card and pursuing bodybuilding? Or have you kind of always had the mindset of like, I'm doing this until I'm dead?
There was one occasion when I first moved to Colorado, I kind of stumbled upon hard times. Like I said, I lost my job out here. I don't have any family out here. I was kind of strapped financially. I ended up doing the 2011 state show in Colorado State, and I got in excellent shape. My conditioning was better. My size was better than it's ever been. But the night before the show, I thought it was a good idea to eat 1,000 grams of carbs, and it all just set my belly, and my belly was huge for the show. And, you know, I think I ended up getting like 6th place in the show. And I was kind of demoralized from that. And I kind of stepped back for a little bit from bodybuilding. My wife at the time, I'm divorced now with a beautiful girlfriend. But my wife at the time, she was big into CrossFit. So I started doing that with her, thinking I might do some of that instead, just try something different for a while. And what it did, it just reinvigorated my heart for bodybuilding again. And I came into the 2012 state show and won the heavyweights. Then the 2013 state show, I won the overall at the state show. And I think that was my first overall I won in an NPC show. But that was the only time I really felt kind of demoralized and maybe took a step back from it. And, you know, a lot of people give me a lot of credit for what I've been doing and the way that I pursued it, because I've really not taken my foot off the gas pedal besides that one time. You know, I see so many guys, they go at it for a couple of years, and then they get demoralized and they take 2 years off, and they come back and they kind of end up where they were. Then they never really progress because they take their foot off the gas pedal. That's something I just never have done. I've continually improved ever since I started bodybuilding.
And that, again, is a perfect transition to something else I want to talk to you about, because, you know, in your professional career, which we're going to touch on that here shortly, I mean, all it has been is progression. And then we see some of the jumps and placings that you took earlier this year when you competed. But is that kind of the key? So the question from me to you, Dorian, is progressing in bodybuilding. Do you feel like the key is to keep that foot on the gas pedal? And what is that? We all kind of understand that analogy in our minds, but what does that look like practically in bodybuilding? Because I've had, you know, a lot of other top IFBB pros on here and coaches, and we've had the conversations about, you know, taking time off from actually competing in order to progress. So keeping your foot on the gas pedal in terms of progressing in bodybuilding, what does that practically look like in terms of your personal experience?
Well, you know, to do this right, there's a lifestyle that you have to attain. You know, you've got to get the appropriate amount of rest. You've got to train appropriately. You've got to eat appropriately and proper supplementation and everything else. There's a lifestyle associated with this. So I think it really revolves around eating. The amount of calories I have to eat to grow is stupendous. It's about 6,000 calories as a minimum to grow. And unless you're a bodybuilder and you've actually tried to take 6,000 calories down consistently every day, you don't know how hard that is and how much it costs. So I think that's the big part of, you know, not taking my foot off the gas pedal, just being consistent with the lifestyle. And that's opened the opportunity for me to be able to consistently progress. So I think that's the big thing. Also having that mindset, you know, I see myself evolve every year, and I can see myself just moving up and being more competitive with other people. And now that I'm on the pro scene, it's just like, I've got these targets of guys that I want to compete against and beat. So I've got that drive behind me and that positive mindset associated with a lifestyle. It's just set me in a place for continual progress, positivity.
Excellent. Now, a question based off of the amount of food that you have to eat and bodybuilders at your caliber have to eat. This is something that I don't hear bodybuilders come out and talk straight up about too much, but when you listen to enough podcasts and bodybuilders talk on their own personal social media, you hear it a little bit. But the digestive health and the digestive side of eating to be an elite bodybuilder, we know that, you know, we have to have that digestive system on point in order to process the food to get the results that we want as bodybuilders for hypertrophy, all that type of stuff. So have you had any digestive issues? If so, how have you been able to kind of ride the ship on that? What does that look like for you personally? I'm very fascinated with like GI health, gut health in terms of bodybuilding.
You know, I think I've been very lucky because I've seen several bodybuilders that have really struggled with being able to put that amount of food down. It's not so much the physical process of mastication, but it's, you know, what their internal systems, their digestive system's actually doing. A lot of guys can't handle that. I'm lucky. I'm just like a fucking human garbage disposal. You know, that being said, I think there's a couple of things that lead to my digestive success. You know, when I say 6,000 calories, somebody might think, you know, carton and ice cream and some pizza, you know, that's a lot of calorie dense food and you can drive your calories up that way. But the amount of inflammation that's going to be associated with that type of nutrition is going to be devastating for your physical results. You're probably not going to look good if you're eating that way. And your external look is probably going to reflect your internal health. I see that a lot with guys, especially guys with like skin issues. I can tell right off the bat, they're not eating right. So, part of my chiropractic schooling is kind of what led me to my success here, because, I got my degree in exercise science, and I was great at being able to formulate people's nutrition plans based off of what their physical goals are, so I can manipulate their body composition. Then over here in chiropractic, it's a form of medicine that prevents the cause of disease. So we're looking at preventative nutrition and how to prevent disease processes. So when I merge both of them, that's when the magic kind of happens for me. So trying to take in clean food to accomplish 6,000 calories a day is a feat, but I think it's a must in terms of maintaining a healthy digestive system and keeping your inflammation low.
Perfect. I appreciate that advice, Dorian. Now, let's go back. I want to touch on your coach, Dave Calick, because he's somebody else that I wanted to bring up in this conversation that you already did. I know you've been on numerous podcasts along with Dave, but what was, I know you've talked about in other podcasts, like there's just kind of this brother connection, this deep connection that you guys had right away. You kind of even alluded to that a minute ago. But practically speaking, what did Dave bring to you to kind of take you to the next level in regards to your bodybuilding career?
Well, there's several things. That's a really loaded question. Well, he's one of my best friends now, not just a coach, mentor, best friend. But I think the biggest thing that he did was reinstate, sometimes like after a loss or something, any competitor kind of questions themselves. But his belief in my capacity to be a great bodybuilder has never waned at all. He's looked at me, but when I first met him, he was coaching Jonas for the 2014 Junior Nationals that I won. He's like, I saw you when you won Junior Nationals because I had a client there. Then I saw you at the 2015 USAs. You got fucked. He's right, I did. And so, that kind of set the tone. But one thing that he's done for me is just, he sees my physical potential, and sometimes he believes in me more than I believe in me. So that positivity, when I get down, it's, and I don't get down much. I'm a very positive person. I'm very strong-minded. But he always reinstates, how good of a bodybuilder I am and how much he believes in me. And one day I'm going to be on the Olympia stage. One day I'm going to be at the top 5 in the Olympia. And, I believe him.
Excellent. Okay. So I want to talk about your professional career as a bodybuilder. When and what show was your pro debut? And then just try and talk about some of those professional experiences up to this point. I would love to have you talk about the shows that you competed in earlier this year after you talk about that pro debut.
Okay. So let's see. My pro debut was the Tampa Pro in 2017. Another rematch between me and Rashid. He was the guy who beat me in the USAs. So he got his pro card. He ended up getting 8th and I ended up getting 9th. And it was a pretty good pro debut for me. So let's see, that's 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21. So I just finished my 5th year being pro. We've done 16 pro shows now. Right out of the gate, Tampa Pro was like the end of the season. Then we jump in the next season and we did New York Pro, Indy Pro, California Pro, and the Muscle Mayhem show in Kansas City. And I want to say Tampa was my highest placement. My pro debut, I got my highest placement. So my second season, it was all within a year's time. We did 5 shows. But my second season, New York Pro, they didn't even look at me. I had a pretty good physique, but I ended up pulling like 15th place. Indy Pro, that's my show. I'm an Indiana boy, and I'm coming to win that mother this year. I took 10th there. I was kind of watery. I deserved 10th. But then again, that kind of taught me about some of the politics associated with professional bodybuilding and seniority. There's some guys I look just as good, if not better than, but they've been in this game for way longer than I have. And they seem to get favorable placements. So that taught me something there. I didn't do too bad at the Cal Pro. Then we did the Muscle Mayhem show. And I think once again, I kind of got skunked and put towards the last call out. So not a super successful first year, ninth place finish. It'd probably be my highest placement. I might have got eighth, I think, at Cal Pro, but I don't think the lineup was tough. As tough, I should say. So that's pretty much my first 2 seasons. I don't want to say I did four shows the following season. They're all a blur.
Yeah. Why don't you just, you've done 16 pro shows up through this year. Touch on the shows that you competed in this year. And then what is your ultimate goal then going forward? You kind of mentioned stepping on the Olympia stage, possibly even being a top 5 Olympian, but touch on the shows earlier this year, Dorian, and then what's kind of the goal going forward in terms of competing and then the ultimate goal for you.
All right. Well, this season was a monumental season in several regards. Within 1 year's time, I've done 7 shows. This season alone, I've done 5 shows. So I've never done that before. That's the most shows I've ever done in that amount of time. For me to be able to hold condition that long, it opened my eyes to something I didn't even think was possible. But then again, I started the season off really hot. I came in, did the Indy Pro, pulled my highest placement I've ever pulled at 4th place. Then the following weekend, I went to the New York Pro and ended up placing ahead of Blessing and Mohammed, who both placed ahead of me in the Indy Pro. And I pulled another 4th place and a pretty strong lineup. Nick Walker won that show, and that's where he got his Olympia qualification. And that was great. I think that was really this is my breakthrough season, to be recognized and for the judges to see my physique the way that I see my physique, and also to create the advances that I created in the off season. It was really gratifying. But what happened, I got a boatload of Olympia points right out of the gate, and it looked like I was going through the Olympia. Then I wanted to seal the deal and do a few more shows. And I don't know exactly what happened. I didn't come in terrible, but it seems like my body might have been a little bit tired and not as fresh as my first 2 shows. I might not have quite the same size and pop, but I didn't get as good as placements. And I think I got a 10th in Puerto Rico, 8th in Tampa, 7th in Texas. So I got no more points after those first 2 shows. But at the same time, it taught me something, that I can sustain conditioning for that long, which I've never done before. I basically dieted from January, the end of January, all the way to 4 weeks ago.
So what is kind of your mindset, you and Dave's mindset going forward in terms of competing? Are you shutting it down for the rest of this year? What does that kind of look like going forward?
Yeah, we're in off season now. Weight's coming back up. The strength is coming back up. The plan is, I'm an Indiana boy, and that Indiana show's mine, and I want it. I want it so bad. I thought I could have the potential to win it last year. I really did. But after seeing Justin and how good he was, and I don't think I was very far behind him. There's just a couple things. I should have been a little bit tighter with my conditioning. I should have practiced my posing a little bit more, and I could have been 1st or 2nd in that show. That being said, that's our goal. Our next show is going to be May 14th at the Indy Pro. We're already in off season. We're putting on the size, and we're kind of refining everything to help me go next level.
And then the ultimate goal then is to step on the Olympia stage, correct?
I think I'm going to be on the Olympia stage next year.
Awesome.
I think if I don't win Indy Pro, I'll probably step right up and I'll do probably New York Pro and Cal Pro. And if I don't win either of those, I'll probably have enough points to get into the Olympia, because I think I will place very high. But that's the goal. I've always wanted to be on the Olympia stage. And my thing is, as long as I'm healthy, as long as I enjoy doing what I'm doing, as long as I'm not injured, and I'm not, once again, as long as I'm healthy, I'm going to continue what I'm doing what I'm doing, because I just keep getting better every single year. There's never been a single year, besides that one show in 2011 where I thought I retrogressed. Besides that, every single show that I've ever done, I continually get better. Every season, I get better. And it's just a matter of time until I'm among the best. I've been doing this a long time. I remember watching an interview with Ronnie Coleman, They say, Ronnie, you've been on top. You've won all these Olympias year after year. And they're like, what sets you away from the rest of the competition? He goes, well, I've done this at least 5 years more than anybody else has done. So he has the time under his belt, you know. I've been bodybuilding and weight training for 24 years. I've been bodybuilding, doing bodybuilding competitively for 21 years now. And I get better every year. So where's the point break when I'm finally good enough to be an Olympian? I think I could be there this year, but I think I'll definitely be there next year.
For sure. For sure. No, it's encouraging. You know, we see some people, they kind of like a Phil Heath, right? Kind of step in and just explode on the scene. And then people like you, it's just that slow grind. And I think that's more of the reality of bodybuilding, right? It's not necessarily a sprint. For very few people, it's a sprint. For the majority of people, it's a marathon, it's a grind. You've got to put in your time, and I appreciate somebody like you and your career, because it's relatable to more of us, you know, individuals that are just kind of more like fans and just in the gym training, not at your level. So I think it's honorable. I think it's super cool. I want to be respectful of your time. I want to wrap this conversation up. Just a couple other things I want to touch on before we do, though, Dorian. How long do you kind of see yourself? You know, I know you mentioned as long as you're healthy, but do you kind of have a time frame in terms of how long you want to be a competitive professional bodybuilder, or are you just going to go until, you know, you feel like you've put in your time and you feel like you're done?
Yeah, the one thing that I didn't mention, you know, as long as I'm healthy, as long as I continue to progress, as long as I can continue to progress and get better, I will continue to do this. And seeing, you know, there's a couple of things that I have in mind. You know, I don't really know, but look at Dexter Jackson. He's into his 50s before he decided to retire. I know personally, like I told you, I was just a late bloomer. So I feel like I'm behind on the biological clock. So I think I might be able to extend my career a little further. I really don't know. I can see myself doing this for another 6 years, no problem. You know, that puts me at 45 years old. And I think that, let's see, I've been a pro 5 years now, 10 years as being a pro bodybuilder. I feel accomplished with that. But I'm not limiting myself to that. I'm keeping my mind open because, you know, there's some bodybuilders that are well over 45 years old. You know, I think Ronnie Coleman, he didn't hit his prime until he was my age. When he was 39, that's when he went next level. So I think I'm going to do the same thing.
I believe it, man. I believe it. The last thing I want to ask you about is training. What's kind of your philosophy? What is kind of your mindset for yourself personally in terms of training? So when you step in the gym, like what does that look like? Is it more high intensity, high volume? Where do you fall in terms of philosophy with training, Dorian?
Well, you know, two big factors. First thing I think of, longevity, just being able to sustain your lifting without injury. So being smart and being safe, that's number one. Number two is intensity, being able to push yourself to an intensity that will create some type of a change, whether it be put on muscle tissue or whatever. So that being said, you know what my 1 rep max is? Neither do I. I don't ever do it. It's pointless to me. You got to let your ego go. You know, I might be able to tell you what my 10 rep max is, but I really don't train too much under that rep range. Kind of like 8 to 21 is the rep range I stay in. Sometimes I'll do a crazy set of leg presses where I do almost 100 reps on a drop set. But typically I'm somewhere between 8 and 21 reps. With every exercise I do, I'll do a warm-up set, just kind of get a feel for it, get the blood flowing, 21 reps. Next set, 14. Next set, 12. Then the next set's a max set. So wherever that lands me. And I want to land somewhere around 10 reps. You know, I've had some knee issues in the past, so I kind of avoid certain exercises. But then again, I try not to avoid anything too much. But for the most part, you know, I'm healthy and I can do everything with training. And I think that's because I'm just kind of smart about it and I don't go too heavy. I can squat 500 pounds for the rep range I just said. I can go slow for 10, or I can bounce them out for 21. But I would say over the past 5 years, I've really tried to eliminate inertia. I really tried to eliminate any type of bouncing out of my motions. I see tissue has kind of an elastic quality, and you have like kind of a tendon recoil that you can use to move weights. But then again, the point is not to move weights, it's to put stress on the muscle so you can create muscle damage and in turn create a stimulus to grow muscle. So I think that's been my big thing over the past few years, just really slowing everything down, making sure there's no balancing, and focusing on stimulation and contraction at a moderate weight.
Perfect. All right. Who are a couple current IFBB pros that you are kind of looking forward to standing next to on stage and one day beating?
Ian Valier. First guy that comes to mind. He's just had a really successful season this year. I've been standing on the second call out, watching him on stage. I think he's a great bodybuilder, and I think he's somebody that I'd like to be able to move ahead. Some of these guys that are coming up, they got kind of these shorter physiques, kind of squatty physiques. Hunter Labrada has that. Nick Walker has that. They're great bodybuilders. I'm not discounting them by any means, but these are guys that I want to get in there and hammer out with and become victorious. I've got a good friend of mine, Phil Clayhar, and he's always been just a couple placements ahead of me in every single Tampa Pro that we've ever done. And I think it'd be gratifying to get a win over him. But, it's nothing personal. It's just, these are goals that I set for myself, and guys who I think are doing very well and, moving up and being progressive. And I want to be just as progressive and more successful. So I think these guys are great motivation for me. And as part of what helps me progress to be a bodybuilder is because the success of these guys and how good they are. And that just drives me. So, I want to beat them, but at the same time, I really appreciate them and I respect them.
100%. All right, Dorian. I just want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day just to jump on the podcast, share a little bit of your story, share a little bit of your experience and insight. Is there anything that you would like to leave with the listeners as we finish up here?
Oh, not much. Just, thanks for watching this episode and thanks for having me, Quentin. Number one piece of advice I've given people through the years is consistency is key. You probably heard that before, but I'm a living example of that. I've been doing this for 24 years and every year I just get a little bit better. Don't give up because it's only going to set you back. If you're trying to be a good bodybuilder, keep your foot on the gas pedal, keep progressing, keep getting better. And that's what will happen.
Perfect. Great way to end it. Thank you so much, Dorian. Again, listeners, thank you so very much for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast. Two things I would just ask all of you listeners and viewers. If you have not done so already, go to the Behind the Muscle podcast YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We've got all kinds of awesome interviews in the past, currently and upcoming. That's where you can find all of the awesome content, the awesome interviews is there on the YouTube channel. And also take this episode of Dorian, share it on all your social media platforms. Make sure you tag Dorian, tag myself. And finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.